You're listening to the ESP, the European Skeptics Podcast, an independent weekly show set out to bring you news, interesting topics, and interviews with people mostly from Europe, building bridges and breaking down language barriers to show the world how active and awesome the skeptical movement is in the region. This is episode 498. I'm your host, Andras Pinter, and joining me for the show is my co-host, Pontus Böckman. Sia!
Hejsan, Andras! Back home, I see.
Yes, back home. Yes,
back home.
That's correct.
Yes.
Looking ahead, I'll have a crazy week, but I'm really looking forward to it. But I understand that you'll have that too, going to the book fair.
Yes. As we record this, tomorrow I will take the train to Gothenburg, and then I'll be there for almost 5 days. The fair is 4 days, but I'm arriving a day early and leaving a day late. And it'll be fantastic. It'll be very, very interesting. I will tell you all about it when I get back.
Oh, that's what you call a fairy tale, right?
Fairy tale. Very good. So, but I should say, I mean, people may still have time to hear this before it's too late. If you are in Gothenburg during the weekend, why don't you pop down to the book fair and say hello to me and to the others in the Swedish Skeptics there. We have 2 stands, or rather 1.5 maybe, depending on how you count. We have one where we sell our t-shirts and discuss with people, and we have our magazines and stuff. And then we have one just next to that, which we are sharing with the Swedish humanists. And in the other booth, there will be panel debates, there will be interviews, there will be people talking. I will say something at some point, I believe. I haven't decided quite yet. But yes, I will. I mean, there is, and if you go to vof.se, there is the schedule for who is talking when and how and exactly what's going on.
By the time this goes out, I will have already participated in several things as well. I think I mentioned last week that on Wednesday I'll be doing that. So we are recording on a Tuesday. On Wednesday I'll be doing like a bit of a comedy sketch kind of thing with local thinkers, critical thinkers. And on Thursday I will have done my talk on Skeptics in the Pub online. And on Friday I'll be participating in a panel discussion about online disinformation at an event which is part of the Night with the Researchers set of events. So it's a pretty big thing it has become in Hungary. It's on the 26th of September, yeah.
I think you should create a title there. So the Knights of Research, the Knights with K. That would be very good.
Ooh.
You can have that one good. For free.
It wouldn't work in Hungary. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm not sure it would work in Hungarian, but it definitely works very well in English. Never mind.
Yep. Okay, so before we go on with the real show here, I want to just a quick note about climate change. It's sad news. It's a little bit
biggie.
Yeah, well, no, it's a biggie in a way, but it's too short to make a regular news item out of it. But obviously researchers are following all kinds of trends and changes as the climate is changing. And people keep track of glaciers as well. And glaciers are melting due to these changes, and it seems to be accelerating. On the 22nd of September, a group of Swedish researchers reported that out of Sweden's roughly 270 glaciers, 8 of them has now completely disappeared this year. So scientists say that these glaciers will not come back. And this includes the northernmost glacier in Sweden called, and maybe this is a word of the week thing, it's the Tjunujökull. And it's part of the national park of Vadvetjokka. And I apologize for mispronouncing these names because it's not my language. They are names from the northern variant of the Sami languages, and I don't speak any of the variants of the Sami languages, so I'm just trying to do this phonetically. But anyway, it's sad news. Just another reminder that we are living through an extreme time of climate change that we brought on ourselves, and we seem quite incapable to do anything about it, even if we know what the problem is.
Yeah, because it's one thing for researchers to know what the problem is and communicating them towards the highest level decision makers, but another thing is what those decision makers are basing their decisions on. If they don't listen to the science, then we're all fucked, and this is a great example of that.
Yeah.
Another might be how we're fucked when it comes to vaccinations and stuff, but I believe we will have a little bit more on that later.
Yeah. It's unavoidable, I'm afraid.
Okay, so let's move on to the first regular segment of the show, which is This Week in Skeptical History, also known as TWISH. This week, I'd like to celebrate something that is somewhat of a mathematical triumph. Today, as of the day of this recording, the 23rd of September, marks a special anniversary in the history of science, because in 1846, on this day, which is exactly 179 years ago, I could have waited a year, I know, and that would have been a very round number, but that was the date when astronomers at the Berlin Observatory made one of the most extraordinary discoveries in scientific history. They found Neptune. The 8th planet of our solar system.
Had they first misplaced it and then they found it again, or was it the first time?
Yeah. Oh God, I dropped it somewhere.
It's a big thing to lose.
Yeah, it's quite a big thing to lose. But the thing was that they had no idea what was there. They only knew that there was something. And this is what made this discovery truly revolutionary. Neptune had been mathematically predicted before it was ever seen through a telescope. Mm. And the whole story begins with Uranus. No. The whole story begins with Uranus. No, not yours. It's Uranus, discovered by William Herschel in 1781. Mm. And as astronomers kept track of Uranus's orbit through the early 19th century, they noticed that something was off. Something troubling was happening, because the planet wasn't following the orbit that Newton's laws of gravitation predicted.
So either Newton was wrong or something else was happening.
Exactly. And by the 1820s, these discrepancies had become impossible to ignore, so something had to be done about it. It was occasionally moving too fast compared to how it should have behaved, and other places too slowly. So that there were discrepancies that needed an explanation. Obviously, as you mentioned, this presented scientists with a profound dilemma. Either Newton's universal laws of gravitation, one of the foundational pillars of physics, was fundamentally flawed, or something else was influencing Uranus's orbit. The scientific method demanded a testable hypothesis, and two brilliant mathematicians independently chose to pursue the second possibility. Thank God they did. So that an undiscovered planet beyond Uranus was gravitationally tugging it off course, and that was responsible for the measured discrepancies. So, in the 1840s, I know I'm going to be coming to the actual date of,
okay,
of the discovery as well, but I'm trying to I'm trying to provide a background here for the whole thing. So in the 1840s, a French mathematician, Urbain Le Verrier, I really hope I pronounced the name correctly, and the British astronomer John Couch Adams, they began working independently on this cosmic puzzle. Using nothing but mathematical calculations based on Newton's laws, they attempted to determine not just that another planet existed, but exactly where it should be located in the vast darkness of space, which is quite a challenging task, because this was mathematical detective work of the highest order.
Yeah, I mean, you have three, if we accept that it's there, you have three different variables at least, maybe more, but exactly. you have the mass of the other object, the orbit of it, and how fast it's moving. And all of those can vary, and I'm sure maybe there are other variables as well that you have to just, try out, I guess, in that time.
And instead of using two objects for these calculations, you had to work with three. And that makes it all the more difficult. Oh. So
the third being the sun, or what?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes,
right. Okay.
Because a gravitational problem that you need to use, you have to work with the two objects that between which there are the gravitational forces in effect. Mm. And if there is a third, it becomes all the more difficult.
Makes it that much more complicated, yeah.
Yeah. So Leverrier and Adams were able to predict Neptune's existence and trajectory by, instead of just guessing, using a detailed mathematical approach called perturbation theory.
Mm-hmm.
This is basically a way to figure out how small influences like gravity from a hidden planet change the orbits of planets over time. And this required breaking down Uranus's movements into hundreds of tiny calculations and repeating the work many times to narrow down where the mysterious planet could be. To do this, Leverrier and Adams had to use long and complex calculations involving sums of trigonometric functions. So what they did essentially was they broke Uranus's path into dozens of cycles, represented as sine and cosine waves, each one of these cycles reflecting different influences or patterns in its movement. Leverrier, in particular, ended up using 79 different cycles and 144 separate terms, calculating everything by hand. So there was no help of computers or calculators at the time.
You had an abacus.
Oh, yeah, that was present, of course, but probably not used very often. So every single number was written out, checked, and used to slowly build a case for where the hidden planet could be found. And on the 31st of August, 1846, Leverrier sent his calculations to Johann Galle at the Berlin Observatory. When Galle received the letter on the 23rd of September, he wasted absolutely no time. He jumped right on the task, and that very night, with the assistance of a guy called Heinrich Darré, he aimed his telescope toward the predicted location, and within an hour of searching, they found it.
That's a good prediction. That's science when it really works. You predict something, and it turns out to be exactly where it's supposed to be.
And I love how yeah, exactly. And I really love how the reportings on this event depict Darré, the assistant, reportedly exclaimed, quote, "That star is not on the map," when they spotted this new celestial body. Obviously, it was not precisely there, but it was less than 1 degree from where Leverrier's mathematical predictions put it. And this whole discovery represents one of the greatest validations of the scientific method in history.
And Newton was right after all.
Absolutely. So we can rest assured that Newton was right. Well, someone would probably say that, oh, not according to Einstein, but don't worry about that. So what happened here is scientists identified an anomaly, formed a testable hypothesis, made precise mathematical predictions, and then confirmed those predictions through observation. This cycle of hypothesis, prediction, verification is the very essence of reliable scientific inquiry. And that demonstrated, Neptune's discovery demonstrated that the universe operates according to consistent, discoverable laws as well. So when faced with observations that seemed to contradict this established theory, scientists didn't abandon Newton's laws, they used them to make an even bolder prediction. So, as you said, it vindicated not just Newtonian mechanics, but the entire approach of using mathematical models to understand the natural world. So, the legacy of the 23rd of September 1846 lives on every time scientists use mathematical models to make predictions about the natural world, then test those predictions through careful observation. So, I think it's a worthy event in the history of science to celebrate.
Yeah.
And cheers to that.
Yeah. Good work, boys. Good work.
Yeah, mathematical modeling in science is very important, and it has been ever since. I mean, even earlier than that. But it works, bitches. It's just so cool. All right. But with that kind of celebrational mindset and vibe, let's move on to finding out what's been happening across Europe that might interest skeptics.
Yes, it's the time of the year again when the Ig Nobel prizes are announced. And these are the awards that first make you laugh and then makes you think. Always such a blast, and almost always useful and interesting, even if at first they will sound just silly. But it's fun also. I mean, that proves that science can be fun, and should be fun, I guess, in a way. So the Ig Nobel Prize ceremony was founded by Mark Abrams in 1991, so it's been around for a while. And he's still the master of ceremonies when the awards are presented. The Igs, as they call them, are handed out by, quote, genuine, bemused Nobel laureates, end quote, at a gala event held every year at Harvard University or MIT or Boston University. I guess they do it a little bit differently. The fun fact is, and I think we've mentioned that a long time, when it happened, is that the Ig Nobel Prize itself got a prize in 2022. They got the Heinz Oberhummer Award for, quote, outstanding science communication, end quote. I think that was very well deserved, but it's fun to give a prize to a prize, I think. Anyway, who were this year's lucky winners? And we should remember that this is 99%, maybe even more, serious research. It just happened to sound silly or bonkers to others, but nobody sets out to win an Ig Nobel award, I think. I think most of them are doing this seriously, and then some of it gets awarded. So, first we have the Literature Prize. And I guess they change the prize categories a little bit every year to fit with whoever they want to give the prize to. But the Literature Prize is going to the late Dr. William B. Bean in the US for his many publications on a specific subject. And the last thing he wrote back in 1976 tells you what it's all about. It was called, quote, Nail Growth, 35 Years of Observation, end quote. So this guy, for 35 years, he kept track of and analyzed and documented the rate of growth of one of his fingernails. So that's interesting, I guess. Nobody else have ever done that, I think. And just to note also, for the real Nobel Prizes, you have to be alive to receive it, right? But they don't have those rules in the Ig Nobel, so you can give it posthumously to somebody who did something interesting a long time ago. So that was that one. Then we have the Psychology Prize. It went to Marcin Sajenkovsky and Gilles Gignac. I have no idea how that's supposed to be pronounced. I'm so sorry. But they investigated what happens when you tell narcissists or anybody else that they are intelligent. So that's interesting. I haven't read the studies. So I don't know what happens when you tell a narcissist that they're intelligent. I guess it's not good. I guess it's interesting anyway. The Nutrition Prize went to a whole lot of people. They are from Nigeria, Togo, Italy, and France. I won't call out all the names, I'm sorry. And they studied the extent to which a certain kind of lizard chooses to eat certain kinds of pizza. So I don't know how often that happens in nature, but I guess they did it in a lab, so that's fine. The Pediatrics Prize went to the US for studying what a nursing baby experiences when the baby's mother eats garlic. Probably not pleasant. And I don't know how you ask a baby how the baby experiences that, but probably, I don't know, maybe you like garlic and it's a good thing. It could be. And then we have the Biology Prize went to Japan, to a whole lot of people. I think that's 10 people mentioned here, for their experiments to learn whether cows painted with zebra-like striping can avoid being bitten by flies. And it worked. So if you have cows and you paint them like zebras, they get bitten just only half as often as if you don't paint them. So that's a clue to why zebras are striped, I guess.
Okay. That is a very interesting find.
It is.
And that it's intriguing because you want to find out why that is. So I guess this is the course of scientific discovery, usually, that you realize something and you want to find out what the background of that is. But still, wow. Okay.
That's fun. So, it's interesting because I've heard that speculation before. I don't remember where. That the reason the zebras are striped is because it sort of confuses the flies and the mosquitoes. This sort of validates that that's the case. Interesting. Then we have a chemistry prize. It was shared between the US and Israel for experiments to test whether eating Teflon, quote, a form of plastic more formally called polytetrafluoroethylene, end quote, If that's a good way to increase food volume and hence satiety without increasing calorie content. So the idea is that you put Teflon in your food to feel more full and then you don't get as many calories. That sounds like a terrible idea. But
especially since, to my knowledge, Teflon is considered harmful when it actually gets into your food. So
that's what I have heard as well.
Yeah. I know that's a very vague interpretation of things, but still, I wouldn't try that.
No, I wouldn't try it either. But they say in their conclusions, quote, there is strong evidence supporting the biological safety of PTFE, which is Teflon, including specifically for ingestion purposes. Large volume ingestion of PTFE at levels of 25% of the diet is generally recognized as safe based on extensive animal feeding trials and the extreme inertness of the material, end quote. So, I guess it's not poisonous then. I would still try to avoid it. Don't take Teflon eating advice from this podcast. Then, I'm going to take all the prizes, but of course they're all fun. The Peace Prize went to the Netherlands, the UK and Germany for showing that drinking alcohol sometimes improves a person's ability to speak in a foreign language. This one I can, from anecdotal evidence, I think my German is very good when I've had a couple of beers. And now it's scientifically proven. And of course it has to do with increased confidence, right? So you don't start to think about, how you put together you just talk and then it works better than if you're being too self-conscious, I guess. All right, then there was an aviation prize. It went to Colombia, Israel, Argentina, Germany, UK, Italy, USA, Portugal, and Spain. So this is a global flight, I guess. But it's not the kind of flight you're thinking of, because they studied, and now we're talking about alcohol again. It's about if alcohol can impair bats' ability to fly and also their ability to echolocate. So not too surprisingly, they concluded that alcohol, not only is it toxic for fruit bats, it also, quote, has negative physiological effects on their ability to fly competently and on their calling ability, end quote. Okay, I think that's not rocket science, but now we know.
No,
it's
what a
proof.
surprise.
What a surprise. The physics prize went to Italy, Spain, Germany, and Austria for discoveries about the physics of pasta sauce, especially the phase transition that can lead to clumping, which can be the cause of unpleasantness. And we're talking specifically about cacio e pepe sauce. You know cacio e pepe sauce. It's apparently very important that the starch concentration must not be below 1%. This will, quote, lead to the formation of system-wide clumps, a condition determining what we term the mozzarella phase. So you don't want it to look... Well, mozzarella is fine, but you don't want your cacio e pepe sauce to be in that form. Okay, so that was the last one. It's some very good research right there. I really applaud Mr. Abrams on his in the invention of this prize. It is really, really fun. Science often seems so boring and, it's people in white lab coats and test tubes and blah, 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 and very serious stuff. Science can be fun, and it should be fun sometimes. And I think most of these prizes, you actually learn something. Even first, it makes you laugh, and then it makes you think, just as they say.
Yeah. It definitely does that occasionally. Oh, especially, I was hit by that zebra striping thing with the cows.
Yeah, I was most surprised about that it's safe to eat Teflon. Even if that wasn't actually what they were testing. They just claim that it is safe, and then they tested how it involves nutrition.
Yeah, I'm not sure, because one of the reasons why Teflon is used is because it's supposed to be chemically inert.
Yeah, which sounds safe in a way.
Yeah, So I haven't dug into any of the research regarding its safety and stuff. So it's based on vague memories. So if someone listening to this knows more, feel free to correct us or just let us know what the thing is with Teflon. But I'll be doing some digging myself. Who knows, might be pointing those out in the next episode or something. We started with a bit of a light-hearted kind of reporting. I'd like to continue on that line of thought, because I think it's about time that we talked about the latest developments in what has become one of the most bizarre conspiracy theory cases to reach international courts, and that is the rumors about French First Lady Brigitte Macron being transgender. As of this month, the French president Emmanuel Macron and his wife Brigitte are preparing to present what their attorney calls, and I quote, photographic and scientific evidence, end quote, to a US court to prove that Brigitte Macron is indeed a woman.
Who cares?
I'm really interested in.
She could be one of those zebra-striped cows. This doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Leave them alone. Bloody hell.
But this whole legal development stems from a defamation lawsuit that was filed in Delaware against American right-wing influencer Candace Owens, who has repeatedly claimed, without any credible evidence, that the French First Lady was assigned male at birth. So these allegations didn't begin with Owens. They trace back to December 2021, when two French women, Amandine Roa, a self-proclaimed spiritual medium. And this is how it becomes a very interesting topic for skeptics. And Natasha Ray, calling herself an independent journalist, they posted a YouTube video claiming Brigitte Macron was actually her brother, Jean-Michel Tourneau, who had supposedly changed gender and assumed her identity.
Oh my God.
And this is what experts term transvestigation, a conspiracy theory movement that uses pseudoscientific methods to claim prominent figures are secretly transgender. First of all, who cares?
Yes.
As you said earlier. But the other thing is that making such silly statements without any credible evidence is just stupid. I mean, why would you? But it's understandable that the Macrons didn't just let it be, this whole madness. So they initially won a French defamation case against the original conspiracists in September 2024, securing 8,000 euros in damages. However, in a troubling development, the Paris Appeals Court overturned this conviction in July 2025, arguing the defendants had acted in good faith. And the couple has now appealed to France's highest court. And in the meantime, the US case against Owens presents unique challenges. Under American defamation law, public figures must prove that actual malice is in effect, meaning Owens knew her statements were false or acted with reckless disregard for the truth. Owens' legal team has filed a motion to dismiss, claiming jurisdictional issues like that. So it's ridiculous. What makes this case particularly relevant for skeptics is how it exemplifies the weaponization of gender misinformation. Because research shows that transvestigation relies on confirmation bias and pareidolia, seeing patterns that aren't there. So medical experts emphasize that such conspiracy theories contribute to broader anti-transgender discrimination and scientific disinformation. And some experts claim that this transvestigation thing shares a lot in common with other online conspiracies and represents a mashup of things like QAnon, celebrity gossip, and anti-trans conspiracies in general. And the movement falsely treats being transgender as inherently deceptive, reflecting deep-seated transphobia rather than legitimate inquiry. Yeah, this just shows how conspiracy theories can force public figures into absurd positions of like having to prove basic biographical facts in court. It's absolute madness.
I think the burden of proof here it's backwards. Because if you make a claim and you make it defamatory, shouldn't you have to claim that what you're saying is true? I mean, why should the Macrons prove that the others are wrong? That's the wrong way around to me.
Yes, but I understand that from a PR point of view, you have a difficult challenge there. Because, yeah, from a scientific point of view, the burden of proof is on the one making the allegations. But yeah, the more you try to downplay this, the larger it becomes in the public eye.
Yeah.
So,
but
it could be a case of the Streisand effect as well. Had they not reacted in the first place,
I'm more thinking about the
legal. It might have just gone away.
I'm just thinking about the legal system there. I think the legal system is the wrong way around. It shouldn't be up to the victim to prove that the others are wrong. It should be if you say something like this medium and the other person, if they make a claim, they should prove that they are right, I think. So, but anyway, I guess I'm not a legal expert.
Yeah. But obviously, and it's not surprising at all, the allegations have also been amplified by Russian state media and other conspiracy theories. So it really demonstrates how disinformation campaigns can exploit existing prejudices to undermine public discourse. And yeah, come on, she has 3 children from a previous marriage of hers and decades of documented public life. This case should not even be a case at all.
No, it's silly but harmful.
Silly but harmful, but the important thing that makes it specifically interesting at the end of September is because they say that they are preparing to present like photographic and scientific evidence. Jesus. Now, I'm not sure I want to know what photographic evidence they will come up with to prove
not
that she's
interested.
A woman. No, not interested either. No. But I thought it would be interesting to talk about this for at least a while.
All right.
Okay.
Andras. Another thing. Do you think that solving puzzles can prevent or delay dementia? This is a serious question.
I'm not sure I buy into that. But I have seen a couple of reportings of scientific studies that seem to have proved that, but I don't know.
Yeah, I know I'm come from the same place because I've heard conflicting opinions about this through the years, and I'm curious. I wonder how it is. On the other hand, quite often you read or hear that exercising your brain is a good thing. Of course it is. And it makes sense in one way, but on the other hand, I'm skeptical. On the 22nd of September, The Guardian published a short article. They have a series called Is It True That... And this one was Doing Puzzles Prevents Dementia. And they interview a person called Roxy Carrare. I don't know exactly how that's supposed to be pronounced, but she is a professor of clinical neuroanatomy at the University of Southampton. She says that to say that it prevents dementia is a very strong statement. Quote, a more appropriate way to put it is, puzzles help delay the onset and worsening of the symptoms of dementia, end quote. So that indicates that it has some uses. But it's not a cure. You can't cure it, but maybe you can delay some of the symptoms. And if so, that's good, and that's good to know then. She goes on to say that, quote, anytime we perform a task, the area of the brain responsible for that task needs more blood. That forces the blood vessels to open up and feed the brain. That's her words, feed the brain. And she continues, when they do, they also help clear waste. For both processes to work, the vessel's walls need to be flexible, end quote. Yeah, okay, so that would fight the symptoms and not prevent the underlying causes of dementia. Among the causes, we have genetics, which drives conditions such as high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and diabetes can be part of this as well. Also, lifestyle choices such as smoking and poor diet can be bad for dementia, or rather promote dementia, depending on what side of the fence you are, if you want it or not. She also points out that there are good reasons to solve puzzles, other good reasons, such as psychological benefits, especially for elderly people. It can provide a sense of achievement, which promotes well-being in itself. And doing them with others can reduce loneliness, which she calls a terrible thing for age-related diseases, end quote. And I agree, being lonely is not good. But of course, there are other reasons to be social than to do crossword puzzles. Anyway, so far so good. It seems it can't hurt anyway, can it? But I wanted to know whether she was right, if there were research about solving puzzles, if it is good for or against dementia. And it was very hard to find. There were lots of studies, but they were ambiguous. A lot of them were very anecdotal or very small sample sizes, so you don't know. But I did find one randomized single-blind study from 2022 with 107 participants divided into 2 groups for 78 weeks, so quite a long time. One group were doing computerized crosswords puzzles, so they tested crosswords, and the other group did computerized training with web-based cognitive games. I don't know exactly what that was, but it is apparently things that you normally do. So that is standard of care, I guess. Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing is that the people doing crossword puzzles had a better outcome than the ones using the normal computerized training. So I'm very happy to hear that. I'll just, after we record this, I'll just go away and do a couple of crosswords just to be on the safe side. Because what can be wrong? I mean, this is a low-risk treatment, right? Worst that can happen is that you waste a half an hour doing a crossword puzzle. But if you like to do that, can't hurt, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, but there are other things that can hurt, especially a society, and that is online disinformation, and especially when it comes to political disinformation campaigns. So I'd like to mention here something that is a massive regulatory shift in European digital policy. Those are the new rules governing political advertising on social media platforms. And this is not just another bureaucratic shuffle. It's a story about power, transparency, and the unintended consequences of well-intentioned regulations. So, what are we talking about here? We all remember the story with the Facebook Cambridge Analytica scandal, right? And some concerns about foreign interference in elections, starting from Brexit, the 2016 US elections. The European Union's response to all this was based on some of the European countries and their elections as well that had significant signs of meddling from other countries, especially Russia. So the European Union came up with something that is methodical and comprehensive in their response. And the cornerstone legislation that they came up with was Regulation 2024/900, which is known as the Transparency and Targeting of Political Advertising Regulation. And this entered into force on the 9th of April 2024, but most of its provisions become fully applicable on the 10th of October 2025. And some of them have already been applied beginning of this week. So the only exception are rules preventing discrimination against advertisers based on their location, which have been active since April 2024. So, running parallel to this is the Digital Services Act that we mentioned several times, and it entered full force for all platforms on the 17th of February 2024. And the Digital Services Act and the Transparency and Targeting of Political Advertising Act work in tandem, and non-compliance to them with political advertising transparency can render content illegal, triggering a removal of advertising and stuff. They came up with 5 pillars that especially online companies, well, mostly social media companies, have to adhere to. They established 5 core obligations that represent the most comprehensive political advertising framework globally, actually. So this is something that sounds like we need to be proud of that, because the EU is being hard on disinformation. So first of all, we need a clear identification of political advertisers. Every political advertisement must explicitly indicate who sponsored it and any entities that founded or supported that campaign. Anonymous political campaigns are now effectively banned, and I think that is very important. The second pillar is that it's a complete transparency of funding sources. So expenditures, purchase services, and funding origins must be made publicly available, allowing voters to understand the financial scale and potential influence of donors. The third pillar, mandatory public repositories. Platforms must establish accessible databases that contain political ads histories, targeting criteria, and funding sources. Now, this is where it becomes more and more difficult to adhere to these rules, because that is a hell of a lot of work, and you kind of have the feeling that those social media companies will not allocate enough resources for that to be possible. these repositories must retain information for 7 years. Now, that's a lot of data to deal with. Yeah. The fourth pillar, the strict algorithmic targeting regulations. This is perhaps the most controversial aspect because using sensitive personal data like political opinions, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, or health information is completely prohibited even with user consent in the European Union. For other data types, explicit consent for political advertising is required. And the fifth pillar is direct user notification. Individuals must be clearly informed they're seeing sponsored content, who sponsored it, why they were targeted, and their data protection rights. So even though it's something that we could, these pillars are those that I could definitely agree to. This is important, but it's not very likely that anyone will be able to meet all these criteria. Right?
No, it's hard.
It's really hard. So the story takes a dramatic turn from then on, because rather than complying with these regulations, major platforms are simply abandoning European political advertising entirely. Meta announced on the 25th of July 2025 that it will cease all political, electoral, and social issue advertising across Facebook and Instagram in the EU, starting in October the 2025. The company described the TTPA as creating an untenable level of complexity and legal uncertainty. And as I mentioned earlier, it's somehow understandable. Google made a similar decision back in November 2024. They cited the regulation's broad definitions and lack of reliable election data across 27 member states as making compliance, quote-unquote, difficult to reliably identify at scale. Google specifically highlighted the absence of standardized local election data that would allow consistent identification of ads related to elections across the diverse European political landscape. So both companies maintain that they support democratic processes, but argue the regulatory framework creates implementation challenges that outweigh the benefits of continued service provision. So they say, fuck you all, we're not going to do that because it's too much work, it's not worth it for us. And there is a definitional dilemma that is widely understood, that the regulation scope is too big, so it's understandable that platforms are retreating. So political advertising under the TTPA encompasses not just explicit campaign messages, but includes any content liable and designed to influence the outcome of an election or referendum, voting behavior, or legislative or regulatory process. Now, the problem with that, the definitional dilemma, is that environmental awareness campaigns, for example, social justice advocacy, even public health messaging could potentially fall under political advertising requirements.
Yeah.
And this means that this uncertainty will definitely leave broadcasters, NGOs, and civil society organizations scrambling for clarity, and a lot of effort will be made on NGOs' parts, for example. This is important for us skeptics as well, to try and clarify every detail so that it meets the criteria for this not to be political advertising or identified as political advertising. But that could lead to too much effort being put into that and not the actual messaging. So this is a pretty complex issue. Digital governance is difficult, I understand that, and it's aimed at protecting democracy from manipulation and foreign interference, but the rules thus might be undermining democratic participation itself.
Yeah.
Because NGOs and think tanks, they rely on social media advertising for advocacy campaigns. And if we find ourselves in regulatory nets designed for political parties, we are screwed massively. And we will, I don't know, probably not all organizations will be able to navigate this. And Meta's withdrawal particularly impacts charitable organizations running donation drives, petition campaigns. You can think of a lot of things, and this is not easy. It requires a technical infrastructure that most NGOs do not have. And the European market revenue might not be large enough for these targeted platforms to provide background for that. And as the 10th of October approaches, we're witnessing an unprecedented experiment in digital democracy regulation, as I mentioned. The European Commission promises additional guidance, but we know how slowly these guys work. Key technical details might not be finalized until just a month before enforcement begins. And as of now, it's still not clear yet what the technical details might be. The first real test comes with the Dutch parliamentary elections, which take place on the 29th of October. This is the first major European election under the fully applicable rules. And how candidates, media organizations, and remaining platforms navigate these restrictions will set precedents for European democratic campaigning. So we will see. I'm a little bit skeptical as to how this plays out. And we have an election coming up in April 2026 as well. And some argue that Orban's government will suffer the most because of this, because they spend a shitload of campaign money on online advertising. But this still might have a bad effect, mostly on the small NGOs that try to steer things towards people being more critical and stuff. So we should be keeping an eye on this regulation on an EU level, I think. All right, but we have to keep an eye on people being completely wrong as well. So let's find out who's been really wrong lately.
Yes. 2 weeks ago, I handed Bobby Kennedy. I can't call him RFK Jr. anymore because I tend to say JFK when I mean RFK. So Bobby is what we call him. He got the Really Wrong Award 2 weeks ago for his plans to blame autism on paracetamol or Tylenol. And that also happened this week. Yesterday, Trump made a statement along those lines. But Bobby isn't finished yet, because there are new plans now to claim that he knows not just what causes autism, but also how to cure it. Herregud.
The motherfucker.
Yeah. So he has found a real drug conveniently already on the market, so why not just start handing it out to anybody willy-nilly? It's called, and I don't know exactly how to pronounce this, but it's called leucovorin, or rather folinic acid. And among other things, it is used in combination with chemotherapy in ways that actually are above my pay grade. It doesn't matter too much in this context why it's used, but it's important and it's used, and it's a drug that has been approved for certain purposes. And I'm not a doctor, so I don't know exactly how that works, but I can follow logic and critical thinking better than Bobby. That's clear. So there might be some preliminary indication. We have to give him that. Might be some preliminary indication on a positive effect against autism. I don't know what we would say against autism. It's not a disease that can or even maybe should be cured. It's not what we're talking about. But in any case, it can help. Maybe. But these indications are very small, preliminary, and they appear to be mostly anecdotal. The Autism Science Foundation in the US said in a statement that, quote, more studies are necessary before a conclusion can be reached. They do not recommend leucovorin as a treatment for autism. They went on to say that most of the leucovorin studies involved only a few dozen participants each. And this is very important, numerous compounds appear promising like this early on, but then they fail when you subject them to large-scale trials. So it's absolutely too early to decide that this works against autism. But Bobby doesn't care about that. He's reaching for straws here. He wants so much to solve the problem that he just picks something randomly. But you cannot start recommending a drug on such a flimsy basis just because you want to believe that it works. You have to do the science first, Bobby. This is absolutely reckless, and for that, Bobby gets his second Really Wrong Award in only 2 weeks. Congratulations.
So, are we, as he keeps talking rubbish, are we just going to keep awarding him?
Well, I'll see what he comes up with next. I mean, he has a lot of influence, and he spreads a lot of pseudoscientific or unscientific nonsense that people are likely to believe.
And if someone is wondering why we are awarding someone from the United States in the European Skeptics podcast, is because he does have an influence on a global level, and that
surely
will
does.
and lots of followers of that nonsense in Europe as well, and in several European countries. So we do have to keep an eye on what he's doing.
Yeah, and a lot of nonsense that we get over here in Europe starts in the US. So we need to talk about it even before it comes here, because it will. It will.
Yeah, it will. Okay, thank you very much for that, Pontus. And that brings us to the last part of the show, which is when I share a quote with our listeners. And this week's quote comes from Jules-Henri Poincaré, who was a French mathematician, a theoretical physicist, and philosopher of science.
Good
and
stuff.
What he said was, "The scholar must organize. Science is built with facts as a house is built with stones, but an accumulation of facts is no more science than a pile of stones in a house."
I had to put the pieces together. That's That's some insight
in
there.
the right way. In the
yeah.
right way that makes sense. Yeah. Otherwise it will collapse.
Otherwise you become Bobby.
Exactly. Don't be like Bobby. That could be the title of the episode. Okay. All right. But that really concludes our episode for this week. So I'd like to thank you, Pontus.
Thanks a lot.
Many, many thanks to our listeners for tuning in. Please keep doing so. And until next week, goodbye.
Hej då.
Vislat. This has been your ESP experience. The show is produced and recorded by TheESP.eu. Join us again next time, but until then, please send your feedback and comments to info@TheESP.eu. We would also love to hear your ideas and suggestions regarding topics, and if you have any skeptical news from any European country, we're always eager to hear about them. If you have an upcoming local event or an organization to promote, please don't hesitate to let us know, as we are more than happy to help. All music in the program was written and performed by Keisha J. Gray and George Robb and is used with their permission. Please check out our webpage for show notes and archive material at theesp.eu. Follow us on Blue Sky at theesp.bsky.social. Like us on Facebook or support our work on patreon.com/theesp. And don't forget to spread the word by sharing our content with others.
I don't know how you can believe.
What's happening?
My screen died for a second, but I'm back. Nail growth, 35 years of observation, end quote. And
Okay.
Now my screen died again. I can't see anything. It's black. Hello.
Shit.
Yeah, okay.
Anything else died?
Yeah, well, no.
Is your screen on?
My second screen is working. Close the lid. You still there?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, good. Hur fan ska man göra nu?
Your picture is frozen.
Yeah, I have no idea because I'm flying blind here. My screen is absolutely blank, and now the other screen is blank too, so I can't see anything.
You are the dancing queen,
Okay.
young and sweet.
Oh, now it froze again.
17.
Fuck. No.
Oh, fuck.
No, now we're back. No, it froze.
Okay.
What the hell is going on? This is the same computer I always use, so I don't know what's different, except I'm on a different location with a different network, but it's fast enough, I think.
And this week's quote. This
week's overcoat.
quote. Yeah, so that you're not cold. Okay.